Hi there, I'm Stan Baker, one of the hosts of Circle Forum, along with Shelley Steele and Steve Young. This week, we talk about the question, how can you start something like restorative practice when it's so busy at school right now? Now, it's also true that there's never a month in the school year that's not busy, so taking small steps is what we'd recommend. And I think it's important to learn and understand more about setting clear expectations for restorative practices in schools, and that can actually happen at any time of the school year. Now, if you have a busy school, this episode is for you because you can, in fact, make small steps that start a change. Some of the main things that we cover in this podcast include set your own expectations for small steps. Consider dropping "why did you do this" and use "what happened" instead. The busier things get, consider increasing the time for conversations with students. At the end of this episode, be sure to visit our website, www.restorative.ca, where you can get free restorative resources. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube to Circle Forum. Now, let's head over to this discussion with Shelley, Steve, and me, Stan. We're recording this podcast at a very busy time in the school year. Actually, there's no time in the school year, candidly, that's not busy. How do you, in real busy times, actually start to move from being reactive to being more proactive in a restorative way? This is a question that comes up fairly frequently in our trainings.
So maybe we need to start by asking, is this time of year, May, June, or we used to say April, May, June, as if it was all one month. Is this the time to start something new that you've never thought about or pondered before? Is it a time to start that?
Yes and no.
Never too late to start something.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can start at any time because we got a busy school year. However, just be aware of the time of year and the demands in the month of April, May, June, that you may not be able to spend as much time on this and you may have to take some really small steps.
So expectations may look different of what's going to happen.
Steve, you worked with a teacher last year, the year before, and you started with restorative conversations with her class. I think it was a grade 6 teacher. That was in April, I think, wasn't it?
We started just after March break. Yeah, and we debated whether it was a good time to start, but this teacher was bound and determined. So her class wasn't functioning well, and what could we do? And she'd had some restorative training in the long past, but she knew that maybe that was the way to go. And so we jumped into it. I guess the thing is your expectation, monitor your expectations. If you're going to start in April, May, June by doing classroom circles, or as a principal I'm going to start being a little bit more engaging in a fair process in the office and dealing with suspensions or things in a different way. Just know that your expectations that maybe have to change a bit. It's not going to cure everything and it's not going to be perfect. And so the teacher we're talking about, I had the conversation with her that after the first couple of weeks, she was, oh my goodness, things haven't really changed. I said, we've got to stick with it, right? It will come slow and steady. And sure enough, after a month, it was noticeable difference in that class. And did we cure all the world's problems? No. And were there still some situations that by the end of the year were still there? Yes. A lot of things did change in that class, and kids were starting to talk about how much more fun it was to be in class. And there was a little more respect being shown by kids towards other students that wasn't there before. Baby steps means baby expectations too. So don't expect to fix the world in a week or two because you're suddenly going to start using restorative practices.
Not just a world, but I mean your classroom. We had a conversation recently with a teacher whose response I thought was very restorative. And that is, this is such a busy time of year that I need to spend more time talking with and checking in with my students and hearing from them so that we can have a good April, May, June of school, particularly if you're talking intermediate students in grade 8s, if they're getting ready for graduation. So I thought that was a particularly restorative way of saying, look, I actually need to increase the conversation level with my students and decrease perhaps some of the time taken for more academic things. Because candidly, you're not going to get the academics done if you're not having those conversations too.
I think the other piece around expectations is to expect, if you're changing the way that you do business, and those could be small changes or they could be larger changes, that the people that, whether that be students, staff, parents, they may not know what to do with those changes yet. So they may not come along quickly with you with the different language, or what is he expecting of me when he asks what's happening? What does he want from me? So I have to figure that out. I have to trust what you're going to do with it. So there's a whole lot going on for the other participants that when we're off trying something new that we feel really good about, they may not be fully aware of or ready to move with.
And I think too, with expectations, I like to move in small incremental steps. And so to me, a small step that you can take at a very busy time of year, regardless if it's this month of April, May, June, or another one, is to change one thing in your questions. Drop the question, why are you doing this? And ask the question, what happened? Just doing that will already
Mhm.
start to make a change. The second little thing that I would suggest is asking people what they think. Just like, so what do you think? Here's what I'm seeing. What do you think? Here's what you just told me. What do you think? And those small things can start to move you from the crisis to crisis mode that is so demanding and so tiring.
We talk about April, May, June, and sometimes teachers are their own worst enemies because they're pushing kids to get assignments done. We got to get this stuff in. I got to get it assessed. I got to get it marked because it's got to go on the report cards. And so they're putting pressures on the kids. And of course, kids are, the sun's coming out, the days are warmer and longer. They want to be outside, but now they've got to get all these assignments done. And so there's a lot of pressure. And so we do it to ourselves. It's never going to go away because there's always an end of the year. That's your drop dead due date. You can extend due dates as long as you want and keep extending them. Ultimately, by the end of June, they're done, whether the kids got it done or not. So there's a lot of pressure. Kids feel the pressure to finish off. Teachers are feeling pressure to get everything in and marked and assessed and get the report cards ready. So teachers are tense, but we have to forget sometimes that kids are also tense. They're anxious. There's an anxiety among some kids because summer is coming, because school is their safe place. And now they've got 2 months ahead of them without school. And we've talked a lot about that, about how for some kids, they come to school because it's their sanctuary and it's not going to be there for the next 2 months. So they're starting to get anxious in May, and then now it's June and oh my goodness, what am I going to do at home all summer? Because we don't go on family vacations and I'm not on school teams or community teams. I'm going to be hanging around at home and I don't want to.
And I'm not guaranteed lunch, and I'm not.
Exactly. So we can't forget that. But again, that goes way back to September, getting to know our kids, to know which kids that's going to apply to. So, yeah. When you think you're going to fix a problem by doing something new in April, May, and June, you're already probably a bit too late. But it's never too late to start something. You're going to have some effect, but you're not going to have the effect that you probably want unless you start back in September to do the work.
So I wonder if we could just look at 4 specific roles in a school and just come up with a particular suggestion to help people move from crisis to proactive. So let's start with an EA, an educational assistant. What would we suggest practically is a small thing that an educational assistant could do to become more proactive?
Well, I think your suggestion already, Stan, about just asking what's happening in their role, they're managing all sorts of behaviors, often more about behavior management than academics, but either or would work there. If a student is struggling, just asking what's happening, because it may not have anything to do with the work in that moment. It may have to do with something else that's going on internally or externally for them.
Okay. What about for teachers? What would you suggest?
Back to the story you told about the teacher who said, this is a time I need to spend more time talking with my kids. And I would suggest that's absolutely true. And even if there are some academic pressures to get certain things done, start to wean off, because we know, especially for grade 8 students, by June, they're pretty much checked out. They know they're going to high school, win, lose, or draw, get the assignments done or not, they're going to high school. And so maybe that's the time to start to pick up some more of those class meetings and have those conversations. For younger kids, it's not a bad time. The weather is nicer. Go outside, have a class meeting outside under the trees and sit in a circle on the lawn. It doesn't all have to be in the classroom. I mean, we know there's hot days and stuff, but be creative in that. But as you said, that teacher said before, we have 300 minutes of the day. It doesn't have to all be academics. Let's start to find bits and pieces of that time to let's talk about the summer that's coming up. Let's talk about what kids are going to be doing. And that's where you may start to learn some of these kids are a bit anxious about, okay, let's open up that conversation. That helps the teacher's mindset too, because now they're not totally focused on academics. They can sit back and relax and just have a nice casual conversation.
My experience from teachers who do that sort of thing is that they report that they actually get more academics done rather than battling that all the time. If they've taken that 15 minutes a couple times a week, that they're actually getting more done, what they need to get done for assessment.
And I would make one suggestion for teachers that are all the thousands of teachers that are listening to us right now. Don't say to your kids, if you have a good day, we'll have a 15-minute class meeting at the end of the day, because now you're dangling a carrot in front of them. Just do it and don't tell them. The kids will soon figure out.
What can we suggest to vice principals and what can we suggest to principals that would help make a small step towards preventative as opposed to reactive?
Much like the kids with the nice weather, I get outside all the time. And as the classes move outdoors for phys ed classes or for sitting under trees and whatnot, I would make sure I was out there too. Just having a nice walk on a nice sunny day is going to help you a little bit better. You don't want to be stuck in your office. And yeah, I would be out there too and trying to join in those conversations that classes are having and drop into classes and see what's going on. It's essentially keeping your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the school. And you're still going to have, quote, crises. There's still going to be those issues where kids have problems with other kids, fights or whatever, parents, all those usual busing issues, all the stuff that happens all year. Somehow it seems to be more of a crisis at the end of the year, but just be proactive and get out there and meet the kids where they're at and get your finger on the pulse. And probably a lot of those crises just won't happen because they know you're out there and you're getting to know them more.
And by being outside a little bit or doing that yard duty, you're actually taking care of yourself too, aren't you?
Yes,
you're having
sure.
a break from that crisis all the time because guess what? It will still keep coming. But if you can go out and just be for a little bit, it'll help manage some of that. Yep.
Yeah.
And for principals and vice principals, I think it's also very helpful just to do a quick check-in, walk around with the staff to just check in. So how are you doing? How is it going? And the second thing I think for vice principals that I would suggest is you have a list of frequent flyers. Just make a point of checking in with them more regularly and more often to see how things are going for them.
And check-ins can be very quick.
It seems counterintuitive to make more time for conversations just when we don't seem to have enough time in a busy school day. Small steps and short check-ins with frequent flyers at the office and with school staff can begin some of the positive changes to school climate at any time of the year. Find out more about our work with restorative practice, www.restorative.ca, email me, stan@restorative.ca, and let's take the time in our busiest times to have conversations with students and with staff.